Hey everybody, it's Andy with Boatworks today, and it's also Black Friday. So I guess I'm not entirely sure what that means. You know, from what I've been able to gather, it's you know, when people go out in droves and hit the shopping malls and lose their minds. I guess there's really no other way to put it. You know, every year there's always that one person, and they hit the big news headlines all over the country, and it's I just don't know how people do it. You know, I make it a point to completely avoid all of that. But so I'm doing that again today in this year. I'm going to hold myself up in the shop here and see if I can put something together entertaining for you guys. So with that off my chest, let's get into the show. Now today we're doing a project that's geared for the young kids, and it's a really cool little item. I think I can honestly say it's probably one of the more fun projects that I've done here so far, and it's going to be geared towards 1, 2, 3-year-old kids, just when they're starting to learn how to walk. And also, if they're anything like my daughter, they're around that age, they're getting to the point where they want to copy everything that Mama and Papa are doing, whether it's doing the dishes or outside mowing the lawn or vacuuming or whatever. They're copying everything that you do. And one thing that my daughter started doing this late this summer is when we were outside mowing the lawn, she wanted to come up there and stand on the mower, which obviously we're not going to let her do, but she wanted to be involved. So we went out and bought her one of these cheap little plastic push lawnmowers, and she loved it. But I'm looking at this thing and I'm thinking we can do better than this. So I did a little searching online, and I found that there are places out there that make these wooden versions of push toddler lawnmower toy things. So I'm looking at these, and there are some nice ones out there, and there are some ones that are kind of cheap, I guess, at least in my opinion. So I looked at the ones that I liked, and kind of picked them apart, found what I liked, what I didn't like, what could be improved, and this is what I've come up with. And it's a great project, one that if you have older kids, say 5, 6, 7 years old or whatever, older kids, it's something that you can bring them out in the shop with you and get them involved with the building process. And in fact, this was a project that I enjoyed doing so much that I'm going to make a number of these this year. And obviously one's going to be for my daughter, but the others that I'm going to make I'm going to donate to the Toys for Tots Foundation. Now, if that's not an organization that you're familiar with, look them up. They do great things. I'm also going to be including the templates for this that you can download off of our website. And it's like I mentioned before that all the templates are going to be full scale. So it's going to be a matter of printing them off and gluing them down on some paper and cutting them out. So these are the pieces. And looking at this, you can see when it's broken apart, it's really simple. We've got 2 pieces, 2 end pieces, a dowel that runs through the middle, a handle with an end on it, and kind of a neat little roll cage. And I put some little wooden balls in here, and I haven't glued this up yet because these balls just came in the mail today. So let's start breaking things apart and start building one. Now, as far as the shopping list of what you're going to need for materials to do this project, you're going to need one board that's roughly 6 inches wide by 30.5 inches long and 3/4 inch thick, and another piece that's roughly 1.5 inches wide by, you're only going to need 10 inches of length on this, and again, 3/4 inches thick. And then also 3 dowels. Now, these are just regular old hardwood dowels that I think I picked these up at Home Depot or something like that. But these are 3/8 inch diameter, and 3 of them total. And then also one section of 1 inch dowel. And again, I believe this is roughly 10 inches or so. So let's begin by kind of laying everything out here, just so we make sure that everything fits on here. And to start, I'm going to be using a compass and drawing the two, I guess, the end wheels on here. And the wheels are 6 inches in diameter. So there's the one. And two. Now these side pieces are going to be the next thing that we cut out. And these are the sections that go on the outside of the wheels as more or less caps. And these are roughly 2 1/8 inches wide. And so what I'm going to do is just take and run this through the table saw. I've got my fence set at 2 1/8. And we're just going to rip this strip off, and we'll be able to get both pieces out of that strip. And with these two pieces cut out square, they're roughly 6 inches by 6 inches, I'm going to drill a hole right through the middle. And what this is going to allow me to do is I'm going to run a screw through here, and that's going to give me a center pivoting point to where when I'm cutting these out on the bandsaw, I can just basically turn it around the saw and I get a perfectly round wheel. I don't have to freehand it. You can do it by hand. But it's a lot easier if you make this the simple jig that I'm about to show you. So here's a very simple little jig that I built for my bandsaw, and really all it is, it's a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that's cut to roughly the size of the tabletop for the bandsaw, and on the bottom I scavenged an old miter track off of one of my old miter gauges and put that on here. You could use, if you have one of these, great. Otherwise, you can just take another piece of plywood and screw that along the bottom. All you're using this for as a guide or as a runner inside the miter slot on the bandsaw. And then after I had gotten that mounted, I slid this template up into the bandsaw to cut this groove right here. And this is where the blade tracks. And then at this point, I just measured over every inch and made a hole and drilled a hole. So because we're going to be drilling circles, when I come out 1 inch, that's actually going to give me a 2-inch wheel. If I come out 2 inches, it's going to give me a 4-inch wheel. Now, since we're going to be working with 6-inch wheels, I'm going to come out 3 inches and take the screw that I ran through the wheel, put that in here, and then that'll be my guide for pivoting the wheel around the blade and getting a perfect circle. So now with the two wheels cut out, now we need to go ahead and start drilling all of these little holes where the dowels are going to be fitting in. And to do that, to make this really easy, on the templates that you're able to download off of our website, I've gone through and basically put a crosshairs on the centers of each of these hole marks. So I've gone ahead and printed this off. I'm centering it on the wheel that we just cut out. And I'm going to come in with you could use a nail or screw or whatever, but I'm going to use the tip of my compass, Old Faithful, and just basically make a mark on for the center of each dowel. And I will say that the spacing on this is pretty important because we're working with 3/8" dowels. If these aren't spaced correctly, if you decide to put any wooden balls in there, you don't want your balls to fall out. I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere, but I'm not going there. For drilling out all these holes for the dowels, I'm going to be using a 3/8" Forstner bit. Now, as far as how deep I'm going to be drilling into this, I'm basically just going to be drilling right up to the top of this cutting edge here. So it's a little over a 1/4 inch, give or take. There aren't any measurements on this project that are they have to be exact. So generally, up to the top of this bit, you'll be in good shape. Now with all these holes drilled out for where the dowels are going to be going in, now we need to drill out the centers. And if you remember, I had said that for these plans I spec'd out using a 1" dowel to run through the middle here. So I'm going to be using a hole saw. I wish I had the Forstner bit the right size, but unfortunately I don't. But I'm going to be using a 1 1/8" hole saw. I want the dowel to ride through there nice and easy. I don't want it to bind up. And over the year, I'm sure the wood's going to swell a little bit and shrink a little bit. And I want to have it, a little bit of play, but not a lot of play, and certainly not too tight. So I clamped this piece down to the table because when I'm drilling through, when the bit actually comes through the bottom side here, unless I have it clamped down on top of something, I'm going to get a bunch of blowout when that bit comes through. So by clamping it down tight onto the surface, this is my sacrificial top on my bench. That'll prevent any of that. Okay, and we're through. And if I'm lucky, good. Nice clean hole. I didn't get any splintering on the backside. So I'll repeat this on the next one. So now with the wheels all drilled out, now it's time to start cutting all of the spindles or the spokes, I guess. And again, we're going to be using 3/8" dowels, and the length on these need to be about 7 3/4 inch long. And to make sure that I have them all the same, on my miter fence here, I set up a stop block essentially. So I'll slide the piece down till it ends, and then just keep on making all my cuts. Now we're going to need 15 pieces total. And 3 dowel rods, we'll see here, but 3 dowel rods should give us that. So let's find out. Okay, you're going to need 4 dowel rods. I was off by 1 dowel on my numbers, so luckily I bought extras. All right, we're good. So let's see how we did. Okay. Now this is the part that can get a little tricky. The trick is you got to get one side started and then just work it around. All right, good. It's a little loose, but again, nothing's tightened or nothing's glued up yet. So when this is all glued, everything will be nice and tight and good. So for the time being, I'm going to call this finished because I'm going to get the rest of the pieces cut out so that we can do all of our rounding over all at once. So I'm going to set this aside and start on the next pieces. Now, using my trusty little template here, I'm going to lay this right on top of this strip that we just cut out. And the first thing I'm going to do is, on these templates, I marked the center points for each of these 2 areas that we're going to have to drill out. So I'm going to lay this template on top, and then I'm just going to take my compass and mark the center points of these 2 areas. Okay. Now with that done, I'm just going to trace around the outside, and then we'll take it over the bandsaw and cut it out. So with these two pieces cut out now, I clamp them together, and then I'm going to come in by hand and sand these just to get some of the saw curve marks off, and just to basically shape it so that it looks, I guess, the same on both ends. And to do that, I'm just going to be using a block and some 80 grit paper. Now with these pieces all shaped and sanded down, now I need to start drilling the holes for where I guess the 1-inch dowel is going to be setting into. And on the template, when you look at this, you can notice that one center point is further in from the edge than the other. And the one that's further in, obviously, is going to be the one that gets the 1-inch dowel. So looking at these, we're going to be drilling our holes here and here. And I'm going to be using a 1-inch Forstner bit, a very dull one, but a 1-inch Forstner bit, because I want this to be a nice snug fit on the dowel, because this is the end cap. And to make this a little easier and I guess a little safer, I'm going to clamp it down to the table. And as far as how deep I'm going to be drilling into this, again, these caps these holes do not go all the way through. So I'm just going to be drilling in roughly the depth of this cutting bit here. All right, so there's our first hole. We're going to set up and do the second one. So now with the holes drilled on both of these pieces to accept for the 1-inch dowel, now it's time to turn the attention over to the other end of this business. And the way I'm going to be putting these together is going to be with a mortise and tenon. Now you can do this type of joint, I guess, a few different ways. I'm lucky I have a dedicated mortising machine, so I'm going to be using that to drill this out. But you can also do it if you have, just take a 1/2-inch drill bit, drill the hole, and then come in with a 1/2-inch chisel and square off the 4 corners. Or you can take and use a 3/8-inch drill bit, drill the round hole, and use some of the leftover scrap of the 3/8 dowel that we use for the spokes on the wheel, and just dowel it together. You don't necessarily have to have it mortise and tenon. I'm going to do it that way, but you can also do it any of those other 2 ways. With the end caps done now, it's time to start, I guess, kind of changing gears a little bit and focusing on this piece. Now, if you remember, I had said that this piece, it starts out at roughly 1.5 inches wide, and overall length is about 10 inches, I guess. So I ripped all this off beforehand. So this is already ripped to 1.5 inches, or 1.5 inches wide. So I'm going to cut it down to 10 inches and start cutting the ends to fit into the mortises. I have the center marked on this piece, and my tenons are going to be 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. So from the center, I'm going to measure over 1/4 inch and mark it, and 1/4 inch and mark it. Do the same thing for the other side. Now each of these areas I've marked off as far as what I'm going to be cutting, and the areas that are X'd are basically the waste areas I'm going to be cutting off. So hopefully, if I'm lucky, I've adjusted the height of my blade here correctly. So when I run this through, it'll give me a 1/2 inch square. that worked out pretty well. So now it's time to come in and shave off the tops and the bottom so that I can have a little bit of a, I guess, a ledge to cover up the mortise in case it's a little bit off. Yeah, we're starting to make some progress here. All right, so I've got these pieces kind of fine-tuned and fit a little bit. And nice and snug, nice and tight. Now, what I'm going to want to do is, if you look at the piece that I had originally made, there's a little bit of a taper, going from edge to edge here. And I want to put that same taper in on this new piece. So essentially what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to come in a little bit from the edge of this tenon and make a mark. I'm going to leave it full width in the middle and then taper it back to just a little bit over the tenon on this side, both sides. I went through and marked the center point on here because that's going to be where I'm going to mortise to receive the handle, which is pegged through. So I'll go ahead and get this mortised out and cut off the edges. And then we're closing in on the end of the project, so we're doing pretty good. So this has been mortised out and tapered on the edges. And it's going to fit together kind of like so. So now I believe the last thing that we need to cut out is going to be this handle. So we have enough strip of the mahogany left over, so we're going to rip off a 1-inch wide strip, well actually 1 inch wide by 3/4. So here's our two pieces. This is about 16.5 inches long, and this is going to be the handle, or the shaft for the handle. And this is going to be the actual handle. Now I'm going to put these together like so. Now before I cut any of the tapers in on this part of the handle, I'm going to go ahead and cut my tenons on here while this piece is still square. And if you see, this one actually comes through this cross brace here. So I'm going to cut the depth of this tenon about an inch long. And then the one on the back side that comes in on the handle, that's going to be a standard 1/2 inch. So we'll go ahead and get those cut out. Well, let's see how we did here. Here's the piece that I just finished doing the mortising on, or the tenoning on. That fits on this cross piece real nice. A little bit of an overhang here, which I like. It's just a little bit of detail, I guess. And the handle fits on nicely as well. Now, when you look at this, you can see that I've got there's overhang on this part, overhanging the actual handle part. And I did that on purpose. Next step, mark my taper on this, cut that off, and then it's time to start rounding everything over. And there isn't anything real precise on how I'm going to, I guess, do this. I basically am going to come in just a little bit from the lip here and just eyeball it, make a mark, and I'll probably run my taper about 3/4 down, so somewhere around here. So now I'll just come in and put one in there, one in there. There's one mark. So I guess before we round anything over, let's just do a dry assembly here to make sure everything looks right. What do you know? Looks pretty good. You know, it might be maybe a little loose side to side, but that's not going to hurt anything. It's not loose enough where it looks sloppy, but you know, that way if the wood does, you know, bend or warp a little bit, it'll still have plenty of clearance on the sides, so won't have to ever worry about it binding up. So let's take it apart, run it through the router with a round over bit, and give it a quick sanding, and then we are finished. So how's it sound? Kind of like a marble machine, actually. I like it.